All right, good evening and welcome to the first ever edition, or let's say the maiden edition of the Corporate Bridge. It's my privilege to be doing this once again. It's something that I love to do. Been on television, been on radio, and right now we're doing a webcast series as a way to make sure that we keep impacting people's lives. This is something that I'm certain will bless you. You would learn one or two things from this entire session. It's not just another webcast, it's not just another interview. This is something that you want to take a chair, you want to grab a seat anywhere you can, and make sure that you start writing one or two things down. If you can't see it or you're driving, that's okay as well. Just plug in your AirPods and make sure that you get something from this entire session. Before we delve right into the program, let me quickly give you an inkling into why we're doing this. The first and the most important thing is that growth is important and change is consistent. So if you're growing and you're constantly changing in the right direction anyway, you will find out that you are improving and becoming a better person. In the corporate world today, we have come to this understanding and sometimes an experience that people want to grow, but there's no room for growth. There are those who are also trying, but their efforts are hardly ever rewarded. Human resource is constantly fighting the people are fighting human resources. There's another thing that you see constantly, and that's to do with training and development. There are organizations who are willing to train, there are organizations who are not willing to train. So if you're not fully trained, the organization expects that you get yourself trained one way or the other and find yourself or bring yourself ready into the corporate world. Unfortunately, the educational system that we have does not prepare so many people for the corporate world that we have today. That's why I've decided to come up with the bridge between the corporate worlds. And when I say the corporate worlds, I'm referring to the employee and their employers, the challenges they face, the issues they have to deal with in human resource and learning and development. Now, to kickstart this webcast series, I have the great honor of bringing on board a pioneer in the learning and development space. Of course, you know that learning and development is always intertwined with human resource. So if I say a pioneer in the learning and development space, he absolutely qualifies and is more than experienced to talk about anything in the HR space. Ladies and gentlemen, the founder of Phillips Consulting, a pace-setting consulting firm in the learning and development space, Mr. Folusho Phillips. Welcome on board, sir, and good evening.
Good evening. and
It's such a great pleasure to have you here. I can't even express how delighted I am to be able to sit with you, although not in person. But thank you for joining us this evening.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's a real pleasure. And everybody, in case you don't know, today is Fola's birthday. So I wish him happy birthday. So you can all sing happy birthday to him in your own place. But Fola, happy birthday once again. A great day to
Thank
be
you
doing.
so much. Thank you so much, sir. And I'm glad that you honored this invitation. Okay, so I don't want to take too much of your time. I'd like to delve right into why we're here. The first and the most important thing that we're talking about is learning and development. And just to give our viewers at home an inkling into what we're discussing, we're asking ourselves, is learning and development a tool for impact or has it become a KPI tool? But before we get to that, let me just ask, what was learning and development like when you started?
Um, I think let's put it in context a bit, and a bit of history will be useful, especially since I've been in that space over the last, 30 years or so. And a lot a lot has happened. I think I'll say in the first stage in the early 1990s to 2000, learning was rather institutional in the sense that it was structured, it was hierarchical, and you have the large state enterprises and multinationals like the central bank, NNPC, Unilever, Shell, ExxonMobil, all those huge companies, those large companies in the early 90s up to 2000, who maintained internal academies, and they did a lot of internal training, and a lot of it was very structured. A lot of it was very competency based training in the area in which the business is in. Engineering, even the banks came up at that time, and you found that the tone was more into learning banking procedures, financial operations, as opposed to anything else. So the starting point was that rather formal, in-house, we will train our people for what we need them for. And then we moved to the next stage when consultants like us started to sort of have a bit of an influence. And there was what I'll call the age of the certificate boom, whereby you carry your credentials around with you to say that, yes, I've attended a course, and therefore, because I've attended it, I qualify. So when you're moving from one place to another, you find that in your resume, you can now actually say, I attended this particular course, I got this certificate, I did this intervention, or I participated in a training program of sorts. And that was the year or the period whereby it was measurement by volume, the number of courses I've done, and even organizations themselves, well, the number of people that have gone through their courses. Then I think the third one is where we have what I call the digital disruption, which is really what we've got now. And that's what we've got to present age, whereby the advent of artificial intelligence has turned up, the LMS turned up, digital learning turned up, learning through Wi-Fi, let me put it that way, that turned up, and therefore everybody was able to participate, and training itself had become a bit of a commodity, and that itself has had its problems. But those are the stages we went through: structured, then everybody getting certified, and now it's literally like free for all. You know, go do your stuff, go learn where you want to, and do the things you feel will make sense to you. So that's where we are. So if you go back to the question that you asked, that what was it like for us? I think we got in where it was very classroom based. That's where we started from, the typical training school. But when consultants like ourselves came in, we changed the tone a bit. And I think I need to make this clear. When I started off with Phillips Consulting, we never started off as a training organization. And even till today, I tell people we're really not a training organization. What we found out was that we kicked off in the area, the period of change management. Okay, in fact, in our own case, it was very specific. Our product was total quality management systems, procedures, and things of that nature, which tied in with what the banking industry needed at the time when the firm started. A lot of our work was with the banks because we're looking at processes, procedures, and the human interaction and human interface. So whilst the banks had their standard banking processes, there was a case of, look, we're now talking about customer service. The human interaction was coming to play, and therefore we needed to start getting people to pay attention, not adding numbers and looking at credit. It was now, I have to deal with people. And don't forget, the period I'm talking about was not digital. It was actually going to the bank, meeting people one-on-one, and having that interaction, and going to have your customers and servicing them and providing all kinds of stuff. So you find out that the training we had to do was on that level, was sort of very, very personal. It was about processes, procedures, quality management systems, quality management. But in addition, also we really realized that the people we had to train, okay, they too had to come to appreciate that it was about them and not necessarily you have to develop yourself in order to be useful. And that is where we really started off. That is where we kicked off in terms of our interaction. So that was what learning and development was like in those days, about processes, about procedures, about quality management service, about personal development and things of that nature. And when the consulting part for us was the fact that we went into organizations, we agreed their strategy and say, if you know this is your strategy, how are you going to get your people to align to your strategy? If you know what you want to improve your systems, your processes, and those things, how do you get your people to align to it? So it was in the process of teaching people how to align to the organizational strategy, how to align to the things they want to do, having them to understand what it means, and a whole bunch of stuff that was involved about, team building, brainstorming, all kinds of charts and processes and tools that people would use in order to execute the strategy of the organization. And that was what got us into training the way people look at it. We were never a training organization. we needed to train people to execute the strategy. It was more of a consulting assignment. So that's how it all started.
Fantastic. I like the fact that you have given us almost like an evolution of training before you went back to how you started, where you started from, what you went through, and where we are today. But before we come back to the digital age of training and the
Mhm.
low entry barrier, which is a sort of concern today, what were the concerns at the time that necessitated learning and development?
I think, in a way, uh, I think I touched on it in the sense that organizations started to appreciate that there's a kind of a skills gap. The economy was changing, increasing level of industrialization. A lot more activity was going on. And like I said, at the time, the banks ruled, the financial systems actually ruled, even though they were driving industry. But we all know that the banks have done a lot more than the commerce and industry. The industry that we have now today is all the SMEs that we're trying to encourage. But at that time, it was more the banks redefining how business was supposed to be run. And organizations were even beginning to learn from the banks to sort of say that, your GT Bank, your Access Bank, your Zenith, all of them coming up with new concepts of customer interaction and customer participation. So the focus was at that time, how can we get our people, okay, to get up to speed with what it is we want to do? How do we teach them this whole new paradigm that didn't exist before, whereby customer is king and all those things? We take that for granted now, but I tell you, 20, 25 years ago, it was a totally different game. And the whole idea of customer service and process improvement and value chain reviews and systems improvement, all those things were things that organizations were finding to be a bit of a problem for their people to align to. So the concerns at that time were really about how can we deal with this skills gap. It was a personal skills issue. It wasn't a content or competence issue. It was just about the skills, my attitude, my knowledge, my behavior, tying all these things together to be relevant in the organization. And that's what the organizations realize there's a gap.
Fantastic. And thank you for the way you answered that. Just before I go on to the next question that I have written, I was going to tie a question to what you just said now. At that time, it seems to appear as though organizations were interested in training for the right skill set compared to now when organization expects you to come prepared regardless of what they do. How do you manage that mismatch, or what do you think about that mismatch?
I think you've always got to sort of say to yourself, am I looking at a technical training or am I looking at a managerial behavioral training? There are two streams to this. There's technical competence and then there's behavioral competence, if I can use those two terms. And they say that we have extremely technically competent people that go through the system to become absolutely terrible managers, and then they begin to fail. And it is at the point in which you're managing your organization that there is failure, and then you begin to blame the people. We've had people approach us to sort of say that we want you to run a training program for us. And I say, well, why have you come up with these training topics? Well, we just feel that our people need to do it. And I say, well, maybe you need to take a look at your systems and processes. It's going to be so difficult for you to get somebody to work extremely well and extremely efficiently if the systems and the process and the organization is working against you all the time. This goes back again to the fact that there was a consulting part that we were very involved in. So you really got to say to yourself, am I looking at training from a technical point of view, engineering, manufacturing, banking, oil and gas? Or am I saying that, look, I need to deal with the person? Three levels that you got to appreciate when it comes to personal development. We call it at the firm managing yourself, okay, managing people, and then managing the organization. And there are streams of training programs that tie to that. And once I've got my technical competence, I'm a great banker, a great marketing person, I'm a great engineer, I'm a great doctor, I'm a great pharmacist, all those technical things that you have. But you're moving in your life, you're saying, do I have the personal skills? effective communication, effective writing, right? All those things about my personal development. Then you move up to the next level, managing people, appraising people, analyzing people, mentoring people, guiding people. That's you managing your staff. And then you grow up to be a big boy or big girl. And what's happening? You're now managing the organization. You've got to understand things about your budgets, about planning, about strategy, and all those things that you have, that you need to deal with as you move higher up the organization. So it's those three streams that you find that there's sometimes failure, because in the banking and engineering, those things, they're fixed. You can't fix a car unless you understand how the manual works and all the engineering bits and pieces. You can't go drilling for oil unless you know how the bits and pieces work together. But the point is, am I as a person working well? And I always say that if you ever find out why a manager is ever fired, it's less for his technical capability and more for his behavioral faults as a manager, because they have not gone through that process. So you always got to decipher which of the two we're talking about each time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Now, just before we come to how it's done today, let me also quickly ask, how did clients at the time value training impact quickly before we come to contemporary training days? Well, how did they value training impact at the time?
I think, what we found was that for us, because of the nature of the work that we did, it was because the training was geared to solve a problem, as opposed to just training for training's sake. On one hand, you can say we're running a training program, come and fill up the class. And what we do always is, please complete a form that says, what did you learn? What did you learn? What didn't you like? What was missing? What value is this going to do be for you? And then, because we're going back to these organizations each time to go and get more people, we are asking them, okay, the people that have been trained, how have they done and how are they doing? Organizations vary depending on the kind of training or HR team that they have. Some are very, very particular. Some are very, very specific. And I know of instances where it has been a one-on-one, that is, we training one particular organization, whereby they say, we do want exams to be taken, we do want tests to be given, so at least we can certify that the person has learned whatever it is we ask them to learn. Now, whether it is relevant to solving your problems is something else, but at least we can sign off and say that, okay, the people that came into class, they have been assessed well and they've done very well. Today, because of all our electronic training and electronic learning tools are available, it's easy to give them tests and easy to evaluate them and see how they're doing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Now, that becomes the build-up for the next question, which is that in today's world, what gives you the most concern when you see how L&D is being handled? What gives you the most concern?
I think it's the way that there's a lot of, how can I put it, looking at the numbers, okay, looking at the technical numbers as opposed to the value that we're actually receiving from the training that has gone on, where we're ticking off numbers. Like, for example, even in our own case, you find out that you're looking from the digital learning. You say 95 people attend the course, we're getting a 95% attendance, and it's all about numbers, about attendance, about ticking the box. Literally, at the end of the year, people who, when they are praised, it's a case of, how many training programs did you attend, etc., etc. Going back to what I had said earlier on, you find out that we say that when you want to assess, there's always a value chain inside the organization. We call it internal customer supply alignment. Yeah. And when we want to evaluate how well people have been trained or a department is performing, it is the department to which the service is provided that actually assesses how well the department that provides it with the service, do the assessment. So it's almost like a 360-degree assessment that is done. And that's the kind of thing that some sophisticated organizations are doing. They're saying that, look, we're evaluating the whole department, and the rating that the next department that you serve is giving you, or other departments are giving you, is very, very low. You're late with the reports. They are very inaccurate. You're all kinds of not working as a team, and all those things that the individual department might find is wrong with your own department is what's going to guide the training that's going to be done. So if we come back 6 months later and say we do our 360 degrees 6 months later, and then we say, have things changed? If they haven't changed, then there's been something wrong with the training or process or retreats or whatever it is you've adopted, how they become very ineffective in terms of achieving those goals. But they're quite measurable from that point of view. Find out who you provide the service and how they're doing.
Fantastic. And I can totally relate with quite a number of these concerns as well, because I get into class sometimes and the class is cramped. I get into some classes, there's a mismatch between the audience and the topic, and I'm wondering, what are we even doing here? Okay, so let's move it on to, having been around for a while, what's your take on the infusion of AI into L&D? I think that AI is supposed to enhance learning and development, but I'm very concerned about how it seems to be watering it down in some areas. But let me just ask what your take is on the infusion of AI.
I think a bit of both. I think, to be quite honest, it's a bit of AI today is actually, I smile about this in the sense that AI can teach you, AI can show you what to do, but you still got to do it. You still got to execute.
Yeah.
So I can go in and, in fact, AI is almost making it unnecessary to have that formal training, but it never puts things in the context of you learning or executing or giving value in the sense of you being in a community. And I do it all the time, and we're all doing it, whether it is ChatGPT or Claude. You see that, if I want to learn something, I can just go to Claude or ChatGPT or any other one, Gemini, and ask the questions, and it gives me all the things that I need. But the point is, wouldn't it be great if there's a teacher standing there, sharing this knowledge with me, having a discussion, having class interaction, different points of views and people. So that human community aspect of learning from the AI is learning from AI for individual it's missing. Okay, but the fact still remains that if you use AI to enhance your learning tools or your teaching tools, if you want to put it that way. So we've got some guys, some guys within the firm that are now taking situations, okay, that they would normally talk about, and using and working with ChatGPT, Grok, Gemini, and all those tools to actually have a near animated situation. So you say effective interviewing. Let me just take something very simple. What you should do and what you should not do. So there's the before and after. So the before and after scene, in the past, we used to borrow all these things from the foreign firms, what they were presenting to us as their own solution to a before and after situation in an interview. But we know that in our own Nigerian context, there are a lot of nuances you've got to deal with. So we sort of tell the AI that, look, I want you to, first of all, I don't want them to be foreigners. I want them to be Nigerian. I want the person to be dressed in traditional outfit. And I want them, when they're talking about things, to talk about Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, Isaleko, and all those things in the words that they use, and ask the same questions, okay? And then the after. And rather than get people to play that role, AI can actually animate, not even animate, really show reality, people who you think are actually filmed this process. So AI has its own use, and we just got to learn how to use it for our own purpose and not write it off. It's here to stay. It's going to get worse or better depending on which side of the fence you're sitting on. But the important thing is to learn how to work with it. Otherwise, you're really going to get lost. Those who embrace AI are those that are really going to be ahead of the game. It shouldn't work against you. You should just redefine what kind of training you want to begin to offer. Bearing in mind that at the end of the day, it is still about a human being for now interacting. I know there are robots that are being made, but for us right now, it's that human interaction that's important. And we've got to be able to teach that.
Fantastic. I was going to ask my next question by saying, should trainers be worried? But you already answered that. So I'll just say that can you help allay the fears of trainers? I wanted to ask, should they be worried? But I think you've answered
Oh,
that from the way you spoke.
yeah.
So, can you help allay their fears, and how do they stay relevant?
Well, I think they shouldn't be worried, because they they have got to get on top and see AI as a very powerful tool to enhance their own training capability. You know, to the extent that, um, one of the things, and people in the firm know that they when they see, whenever I have a conversation, it's about AI today, because I said if you're not AI compliant, you're just lost, and we've got to be able to show leadership in that area. And so if you want to design a training program, and I know a lot of our guys that have had their slides done, they've gone and got it redone using AI, and they said, okay, I have this presentation to make. Okay. And last time I made this presentation to a group of bankers. I taught them some concepts and so on. Now I want you, Mr. AI, based on your knowledge of Nigeria, based on your knowledge of the oil and gas industry, giving me live examples based on things you're picking up from the newspapers and current data, to now represent my training program, okay, embedding all these current things in it. So all those slides are presented, notes are made, everything is done ready for you. Then you can now, as a trainer, stand up in class using the content that AI has so, uh, intelligently provided for you, to now be that human interaction or human presenter that drives these discussions in class, gets the debate going, having the little nuances that are relevant, and a lot more research that AI can do than you would have done. So rather than sort of say that it's taking your work, it's like you're using it to enhance the process. And the more sophisticated you are with it, the better, in terms of applying. So it should not. We are happy with it. We're not afraid at all. My
Mm,
guys are doing great stuff with
fantastic.
it. Mm.
Awesome. And I like the fact that you're talking about how it should make you more productive as a person. Okay, so let me quickly take this before we take a short break. I think maybe one or two questions, or maybe one if we can. And on the dot of 8:30, we'll take a quick water break, so to say. So,
Okay.
do you think that training today is being conducted for capacity building, or just to tick the box? Because that's the crux of our conversation today.
Mm.
Do you
Yeah.
think it's being conducted for capacity building, or is just ticking the box?
Well, I think to a great extent the the HR manager wants to tick the box
Mm,
because he's got an HR budget, several millions. You got to prove to the CEO that the money is being well spent, and the only way you can do it is to sort of say that it has been spent. We send people on training programs, but it's left to the CEO to question and sort of say that, look, are you sure you're not just ticking the box? As far as this is concerned, show me what it is that we should be doing, and how well we're doing, and how effective this is. So it's less the challenge of the HR manager and more the challenge of the leadership to question and the HR guy and say that, are you really delivering? Prove to me that all this training has made an impact. And this is what leads me to a point that I always raise, that training needs, or training should really never be the issue or the problem or the responsibility of HR. Training should be the responsibility of the line manager. HR is just to help to execute. I, as a line manager, have got to come to HR and say, my guys are not doing well here. We are slow here. We could do a lot more there. Our productivity is low, and I'm getting a hard time from the CEO or my boss or my director, and I need to get my people up to speed. And we need to really be doing fantastic things. So, Mr. HR, go find me the training programs that can enhance the capability of my people. Okay. And that's the kind of challenge you have. So we got a bit back to front, and we got to try and get managers to start taking responsibility for their people. And they can only do that if HR folds their arms and say intentionally, tell me what you want your people trained in, because come the time when you're not doing well, don't look at me. I'm going to say, I trained your people based on the request that you made. So I think that's a very important thing to bear in mind.
Awesome. So let's hold that thought for a bit. And just in case you're just joining us, this is still the corporate bridge. What we're doing here is to talk about the gap, the issues, the corporate chaos between the employees and their employers. What we're looking at is training, learning and development today. Is it actually a tool for impact, or is this something that just ticks the box? And I've been chatting with Mr. Folusho Phillips, the founder of Phillips Consulting. His years of experience is actually something that we cannot take away from this valuable conversation. We'll take a break and we'll be right back. Please don't go anywhere. If anything, you should be asking more people to join and watch us. We'll be right back.
Fola Daniel Adelisi, also known as Fola Daniel Speaks, the CEO at Edible Pen Training and Development Limited, is a quintessential award-winning and an international keynote speaker, training facilitator, communications professional, corporate MC, and a skilled personal development coach with at least 2 decades of professional experience. FDA is enthusiastic about poise, elocution, diction, and presentation skills, which are evident in his works across various social networks and coaching sessions. He is a highly engaging training facilitator who holds his large audience spellbound when speaking at gatherings. Apart from his several platforms, which includes banks, insurance companies, and religious organizations, he has been a part of some national television shows, and he spoke so intelligently. He is an author of more than 30 published books, a learning and development professional with reputable institutions, and a highly skilled corporate master of ceremony with graceful humor lighting up the rooms and faces of the audience. FDA was on Debaters TV reality show Season 1. He presented You Can on Radio Continental, now Max FM, in 2011, and he did numerous motivational segments on Galaxy Television from December 2008 to August 2009. He currently features consistently on Channels Television and Television Continental, 2 of the leading TV stations in Nigeria, to discuss national and youth issues. He trained as a communications professional with a major in public relations and works as a business consultant, public speaking coach, and digital communications professional. Join me as we welcome Fola Daniel Adelisi.
All right, thank you so much. It's been a wonderful conversation talking about the corporate chaos in the learning and development space. And once again, I've been chatting with the founder of Phillips Consulting, Mr. Folusho Phillips. I'm so delighted to be able to get this opportunity to sit with him and ask him questions about learning and development, ask him what he thinks, the concerns, how it started, the evolution, AI. And we're going to get to a point where we're talking about the low entry level into the training space. But just before we get to that point, I asked a question before we went on break, and it was about if training was being conducted for capacity building or it's just to tick the box. And he has talked about the layers that should handle training and the impact of training in organizations so that people are not just training for the sake of training. Now, in your answer to the previous question, just before we took that short break, you have fingered the line managers, the human resource, and the leaders of the organization. But we know the kind of blame game that happens in many other organizations. The CEO is ever busy. The line manager, if they ever know it's their responsibility, seem to be challenging the capacity of the HR. So the HR feels threatened in some cases, not even realizing that if this person is asking questions about training or question training processes, they're actually helping you out. So how do you handle the conflict of who does what after training?
I think, first of all, after training, the line manager has got to be able to see whether there's been a clear difference in terms of the way an individual is performing. And this takes us again to the role of the line manager when you're doing your annual appraisals. Obviously, everybody says that there's a certain portion of your appraisal form that says, areas for improvement. In which area can this person improve? And those areas are probably the things that have marked the individual down in terms of their performance rating. So those areas for improvement happen to be the things that you got to present to the HR manager and saying that this individual not communicating well, maybe it's a technical deficiency, maybe it's a relationship issue, a team issue, or personal issue, whatever it is that you determine and you've identified as not working well for you is what you must ask the HR people to please try and deal with. Now, the HR manager on their side have got to be able to say that, well, based on what you described to us, we feel that these are the courses that this individual should attend. And it might not even be the individual, it might be a whole department, just depends. And that's where they have the responsibility of finding the appropriate course that's relevant, the level of the course, the nature of it, whether it's an online course these days, or whether it's a group course, or whether it's a course that's held within, or one in which people actually go outside and join others as part of a group or team, which I always find a lot more interesting because of the level of interaction and diversity of conversations that takes place with some of these things. So each person has his or her responsibility. The manager, I need you to train this individual in a particular area. The HR manager, please, I need you to respond to my demands and ensure that by the time we come to discuss this issue again, it has been resolved. The person is better. We can see that the training was impactful and there's a change in the individual's life. And I think that's how I can say that very, very broadly.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so I was going to now ask, based on that, how do you ensure training? And I'm going to ask you to answer by taking two people into account. That is not just, we've been talking about training largely from the part of the organization now. I also want you to answer this next question by looking at the organization and the trainer or the consultant as well. So we can put all the blame on the organization. How do we ensure training returns to team building and capacity building rather than just meeting some metric goals? How do we do this on the part of the organization and on the part of the trainer? Because the trainer also has a responsibility.
I think that honestly, I always wonder the extent to which a trainer engages fully with the organization that's asking people to be trained. I always wonder, we have courses that are listed out, and all you just do is you find out that, oh, we're sending 5 people to your course, to attend your course. And we say, yeah, fantastic, 5 more people, 5 more bums on seats, as we say. But the question is really, has anybody in the consulting or the trainer rather, have they tried to make any effort to say, can I have a conversation about the training manager or the organization? Can we have a chat about the 5 people you're spending? Is there any special thing we need to take care of? Is there anything we need to be looking out for? Is there any way we can sort of personalize this as opposed to just clapping our hands and saying that we'll fill the class, fantastic, let's go? And when we've done the training, have we ever sort of sat down to say, we are going to revisit you in about 6 months' time because we've noted it down that you were trained in January, we're going to come see you in June. And when we come to see you in June, we're going to sit all of you down and ask, okay, what have you done differently? Can we talk to your manager? Okay, and say that, look, these guys in your department want a training program or this individual. Can we have a quick chat? We just want to see if there's anything has improved. This is really intensive and very, very intentional, whereby the people that are, call it the customer service part of a training organization, they're calling back to say, Mr. Phillips, you sent Fola Daniel to a program, and he attended this particular training topic. And we just want to ask whether you've noticed anything different. Okay, has he improved or is he still the same? And things like that. I think it's that intentionality on your part that really begins to define the extent to which you as a trainer, you are in it for the long haul. And that's why when you charge the fees that you do charge, it's like, okay, why are you so expensive? I say, well, we're not just training because we want to, go through the slides and do the videos, but to sort of say that we really want to make an impact. I want to prove to you that we made an impact. And that's how you retain your customers. That's how you retain these clients that say that, well, this organization is great on training because they seem to have a lot of follow up, which is quite key. It's extreme focus, especially nowadays where things are very getting very competitive. I never really need to separate the newcomers in training from those who spent a lot of time doing it. There's always this tendency to feel that, once you don't have anything, what's the next thing that you do? Oh, I train, you know. Yeah, and people come to say, hey, I would like to join Phillips. I say, oh, fantastic. I say, I train in this, I train in that. I say, well, we're not a training organization. We just have a lot of sharp consultants that train in order to get people to execute what it is they have in their strategy.
Interesting. So now that leads me, before I go on to the next question, what you've just described reminded me of a scenario where I would have been embarrassed if I didn't do what you just talked about. So I was sent a training topic and it didn't specify the audience. And it had something to do with interviews. And I assumed naturally that I was going to talk about interviews to those who were just going to seek jobs. I kept preparing my slide, but I felt uncomfortable. I need to know more about those I'm going to train. So I kept probing and I wouldn't go further. I wouldn't relent until I found out that they were asking me to come and talk to mid-level managers about how to interview fresh graduates into their organization. So I had less than 24 hours to change my slide. The slide I had prepared was talking about how to prepare for an interview, whereas what the organization wanted was how the mid-level managers should interview the new graduates that they were employing. So that's a fantastic thing that you just said there. If trainers don't probe further, they may end up being embarrassed. Not just that they're delivering training to tick the box, they may end up being embarrassed. So do you think that the business side of training is overriding the objectives of training?
Well, I think like everybody else, businesses have got to survive, and people have to do what they have to do sometimes. But I don't. It depends on the organization. It depends on the training organization. If you're in it for the long haul and you're really determined to give consistent quality training, impactful programs, then you would not allow the business side to override what should really be the long haul. So it's not a sprint. It's for you as a trainer and looking at it from a business point of view. Yes, you want to get the money, you want to get people to fill the class, as opposed to saying that, okay, somebody wants to send training on a training program and you've done the interviews and you say that, look, you know what, we really can't do anything for you, so we're turning your people down. Say, no, bring them up. We'll fix up something for them. It's a case of whether you're in it for the long haul and you're looking for quality, consistent quality that can be proven based on your post-training interaction, based on the impact you're having, as opposed to just filling the class. And also bear in mind that some organizations, HR guys, they need to spend the budget. So if they're just sending people to you, yeah, it's fantastic, it's great, you got bums on seats, but next time, if they're really looking for quality training, they might not come to you, because when they send people to you was they just needed to clear and respond to the pressure you're giving them, that please send people. So the more discerning trainers, more discerning clients, they challenge a lot more. So from a business point of view, yes, don't be short-term focused. Appreciate the fact that the competition is extremely stiff out there, and quality begins to show, and it begins to be differentiated quite easily after a while.
Thank you very much for that. Now, just so that my partners, my friends, my colleagues in the training space don't think that I am actually coming down hard on trainers, let me balance out that question with another question. How should a trainer personally balance training impact and balance sheet impact? Because account has to balance too.
Isn't that the same question you just asked me in a way? When you say
Similar question, but so that this time around, the only thing, more like a personal tip, you're okay. Let me ask the question from this angle. Sometimes you have to train, and as a trainer, you're also seeing that there are issues. But just like we say, culture eats strategy for breakfast. But your book balance must be intact. So you won't say because they have this culture thing, no matter what I tell them, they're not going to listen. And you're also thinking about your balance sheet. What do you do?
Well, look, like I said, the trainer who can demonstrate impact, okay, and not just activity, he actually demonstrate impact, can eventually command better fees. They can get longer engagements. They can get repeat business. So the discipline of measuring outcomes is actually a commercial strategy, okay, not just an ethical one. So you got to build your practice around transformation that can be articulated, and the balance sheet will follow. Transformation
Fantastic.
that can be articulated, and then the balance sheet will follow. If you understand what I'm saying.
Absolutely. And I like the way you answered it. I like the way you answered it. And that reminds me, I don't know if you know or ever met Richie Dyer Johnson.
I'm not sure.
Okay, so we call him RDJ. He was a coach. He was one of my coaches, or was my main coach. And he would say to me at the time, what he would say was, the proof of good business is repeat business.
Yeah.
So if your customers come back, it means you did well the first time.
That's right.
Okay, thank you so much for that. We're gradually winding up and we're almost out of time. Just in case you're wondering what's been going on here, it's been conversations about checking if learning and development is just ticking the box or it's a tool for impact. And once again, I've been chatting with Mr. Folusho Phillips, founder of Phillips Consulting. It's been a riveting conversation, and I dare say that I'm enjoying every bit of this conversation. I did expect that it was going to be great, but I'm telling you, this is also beyond my expectation right now. So let's get back to the trainer. Right now, with a low entry barrier into a field like this, what can we do to ensure the very best ones are the ones coming into L&D? I know there are a few people who are doing certifications here and there. I know there is the Institute of Training Development. I know there is the International Coaching Federation. There is NITAD and quite a number of them. How do we ensure that it's the best? With this kind of low entry barrier, how do we make sure it's the best people that are coming into the training space?
Demand evidence of impact from past engagement. You want me to engage you? Okay, tell me what you've done. Tell me who you trained. Give me your credentials. Okay, and and if it's got to do with my competitor, if I'm not going to be, if I as an organization that want to engage you, feel that I can, if it is all right for me to go and ask almost like asking for references. Say, can you give me a reference? Anybody will give you a reference happily if you are good. So really what I'm saying is that the professional credentials, they matter, okay? But only if the credentials mean something, all right? If the credentials don't translate to something that you've done very well, then you're not just going to, you can't get into the game, you can't get into it consistently, and it becomes a very, very tough issue. So the organization bears responsibility for the people that they bring on board to train. So when people are coming, offering their training services, it behoves the organization to actually challenge them and not just say that, okay, I want to train, I can do this, I can do that. Prove to me, who have you trained? What are your credentials? Where have you been? What have you done? If you're just starting off and say, look, I don't have a history, then maybe you got to go and pick up a history working with Fola Daniel's team and say that, look, I worked with Phillips, because we do get external people to join us. We have a whole ecosystem of trainers, because the whole idea is to pick people that are very, very good at what they do. And by the time we construct and put together a training package, we know we're presenting people with phenomenal credentials. And what the client is relying on is that they're saying that we trust that the Phillips Consulting has selected good people that can do this work and do this training in an effective way. So for those that are coming in that at market entry level and they're trying to get into the system, well, you got to go and serve your apprenticeship and pay your dues. Okay,
Mm.
doing that also, bear in mind that you got to show impact that you've had, the experience that you've had, and why you think you have a right to stand in front of a class and teach.
Great. I have a follow-up question to that, but before I go, I just wanted to quickly say to those who are watching us, whether on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and on YouTube, wherever you're watching from, I'll give about two people the opportunity to ask questions directly to Mr. Phillips. So you can drop questions in a chat box of any of the platforms that you're watching from, and we can pick it up here and just you relay your questions to him so that he can attend to them. I'm hoping we can have at least two people share questions. Whatever questions you have regarding HR, regarding training, please let's talk about it. Two questions. We have just about 10 minutes to wrap this up. So I'm hoping people would watch and then drop their questions. Now, you've touched on something quite sensitive. While I hope any question will come up. So I'm going back to, besides training costs, what do you think is responsible for many organizations going for finished products rather than catching people young and training them?
Interesting. You find that especially your CFO, he wants quick return on investment.
Mm,
And yet we know, you and I know, that to develop someone takes 3 to 5 years of investment over time. You remember I talked about these three levels of developing self, developing, managing self, managing people, managing the
mm,
organization. So it's a whole process that you got to go through. And the CFO is asking about headcount costs, and he doesn't want to hear that. He wants to see how we can do this thing very, very quickly. And if you train someone, you might feel that they're going to leave. But at the same time, if they don't leave, you're stuck with people you haven't trained. All right.
exactly.
So, you when you say you want just finished products, somebody must have had to train an individual for them to come to you. So you got to train somebody that's going to eventually leave you. So we all got to train for the pool. And there are different factors that make people leave. Yes, you have the Japa syndrome. We know all
Yeah.
about that, but that's a different issue, because training itself it's a value, is a development value for individuals. Some people might not leave your organization because they're being trained well. Some people might leave your organization because they have been trained well and they're going on to the next level. But if we all take the responsibility of pushing out and training, then we're creating a central national pool of talent that we can pick up at the different levels as relevant to us based on other factors that make our organization attractive to them. But certainly, looking for finished products is not the way to go. It won't happen unless you too are providing it to the pool. And if you yes, and if you're going to be looking for finished product, it might be a much more expensive way. So get people, grow your own, and do all those lovely things that organizations are supposed to do to be the best organization to work for and stuff like that, so that you can retain your staff. Developing people is a very strong retention strategy as well.
Mm. Fantastic. Now, this is an off-the-cuff question, and it's just a simple follow-up to what you've just said now. And this has to do with how, no matter how well trained you are, if you get into a different organization with a different culture, you still need some training to adapt to that organization. That's one. I'm also thinking, since you mentioned Japa, let me quickly go there. Many of our trained people here go abroad and they can't immediately get into the skilled profession that they've trained for, which begs to ask the question, why can't people immediately fit in? I know a part of it is culture. I know a part of it is systems and experience. So the real question I'm asking you now is, how do you prepare yourself as a global talent?
Well, I think you'd be amazed that when you talk about people not fitting in, I know that our doctors go abroad and they do very well.
Mm,
Okay, either here or the United States, they're all well sought after. I know that a lot of our professionals go abroad and do very well.
yeah.
But it's more a case of you talk about culture. And I don't know whether it's just culture or you see. One thing I have learned is that Nigerians, we have a different work ethic, and believe it or not, it's a positive work ethic abroad. We
Mm,
find that our guys work a lot harder, a lot more hours. The typical English guy will tell you that he's closing at 5 and he's gone. I remember I've had people, obviously, over the years come to Nigeria, even people who've come to run training programs. And then when it's about 5 o'clock, they say, well, we've got to finish. And then the guys in the class say, we're ready to go on. And I say, you're ready, but it's 5 o'clock there. They say, we know it's 5 o'clock, we're ready to go on. The guy's going down the lift and it's about 7 o'clock and the people going in and out. And they say, what are people still doing around? So the point I'm raising is that, again, you look at the behavior of the Nigerian in this environment. We might criticize ourselves, but they go abroad and they do work hard. We do work hard. We do have a very strong work ethic. We're appreciative of the environment, and if you got the knowledge, you get on with whatever it is you have to do. So for our technical skills, our engineers, our lawyers, even our accountants, and all those professional skills, we tend to go abroad and do quite well. And if you sort of dig out in especially in the UK and the US, where the language is not a barrier as in Europe itself, our people go and they really, really excel. So I would say that for me, that's why Japan is easy. Those who find it who find it to be difficult, maybe they didn't do their homework well, and there are other factors that come to play. Even look at South Africa with all the problems they're having there. They do treasure our doctors, they treasure our accountants, and I know a whole lot of them that are out there, even our nurses that are doing great. So for me, I would not worry too much about that.
okay, great. Well done, sir. And I want, if there's any question from any of the platforms online, please let me know so that we can quickly put it up and maybe you can ask or answer that. Okay, somebody is saying, I believe you get feedbacks from organization after trainings. Do you also provide feedback to the organization which could help them identify the training needs for their employees in the future? Did you get that? Or maybe I should read it again.
Yeah.
I believe you get feedback from organization after training. Do you also provide feedback to the organization which could help them identify the training need of their employees in the future? That's a question
Yeah.
from Mr. Adebayo.
Yep, yep, clearly, yes. And that's why you find that certainly whenever you complete a training program with us, there are loads of forms that you fill. If you fill them truthfully and honestly about how you feel, then there's a certain type of, call it, quiet assessment that we do as well, especially if the organization seeks for one, whereby we more or less give a very, very brief report, okay, on the performance of the individuals. I mentioned to you that some organizations have actually asked that, please, we do want tests to be carried out
Yes.
with this, but that's for classroom training. For our digital learning, okay, which is quite a lot, though we provide, I'm sure we must have about 10,000 or more people that are on a digital learning platform through different organizations. There's a natural testing process, an assessment process that goes on. So you do your training, you get assessed. You can't move to the next level unless you're scoring 95 or 85. So you can't be stuck at level 2 over and over again. And part of the LMS report is saying that, Mr. Folusho Phillips at level 2, he had to do it 3 or 4 times before he moved to level 3, and then another 3 or 4 times before he moved to level 4. And that itself is saying a lot about, how well you're doing and your competence, and something that your employer should note that, hey, this guy seems to be struggling, and therefore we might need to give it additional help. So a lot of that is being automated now beyond the ones that you do in class.
Thank you. Let me see if I can fit two questions into 2 minutes and we
Okay.
can wrap up at 9 p.m. So the first question, based on what you just said, especially regarding digital training and platforms and all of that, don't
Mm.
you think that the approach we're taking, the assessments being deployed and insisting that people must meet a certain grade before they are allowed to progress, don't you think that we are beginning to train for people to memorize content rather than just focusing on impact?
Mm. Well, one
because
thing you got.
because I've seen a bit of that as a trainer myself.
Mm. Yeah, you got to bear in mind that the starting point is I have got to understand the theory of what you're saying. That's the starting point. I've got to understand what it is that you're saying. What is the theory? What are you trying to teach me? Okay, do I understand it? My ability to go out and execute it and act accordingly is something that's totally different. There's no way in which I'm going to act in a way to execute things that I don't understand and haven't proven my knowledge of it. So for me, I certainly for the type of people I expect that we're all dealing with, there's a certain level of intellectual capacity that is required. I always say that anybody that qualifies out of a university, I look less at the fact that you got a degree in biology, physics, chemistry, or marketing or law. You have proven to me your ability to learn. Okay, you have proven to me that I can learn, because you can put me in class and say I've got to be a medical doctor. Probably take me 20 years to do that, but the point is I have shown that I have the ability to learn. So, and that's what I need to do. So if you get a grade that's showing that you are not learning what it is I need you to know before you go out and act it out, then we've got a problem. So grading people is important. It is very, very important. Unless the work is of a practical nature, and you're now talking about skills development. I'm an engineer. I need you to assemble a machine. I need you to assemble a carburetor. I need you to fix something. Then that's a different issue. But if the grading and the knowledge, okay, is something that I'm asking you to look through. If you go through a training program, okay, online, and then I'm asking you to go over it again and again, and you're saying you're memorizing. Even if you memorize, that at least you've learned something. And if you're now going to go out and execute, then I know you've learned it, even though you had to cram it. But at least you know, as opposed to not having any knowledge at all.
All right.
Reality.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you so much. So one final question and then we'll call it a day. I'm hoping this can be very short. So the question is, since the world is constantly evolving, and thankfully you've referenced AI and some of the questions have addressed that as well. So since the world is evolving and organizations have to evolve or adapt, how do you train for disruption?
Agility. You got to train people to have a continuous learning mindset. A continuous learning mindset. You're learning all the time. You're learning how to learn. Somebody, there's an advert where you learn, you unlearn, and then you relearn. So it's not so much that I've got to understand what is going on now. The point is I've got to have a mindset that allows me to learn as I go along. That's what I just talked about. Somebody proving that they're intelligent. You're proving that you can learn. This is the way we do these things today. But things have changed. But I have learned to unlearn and relearn the things that I need to do. So it's that mindset. So I don't believe that the training for disruption is training for you to be ready to unlearn and relearn the things that you had before, to be able to drop the things that you were doing and do new things, because that's what's relevant to the world that you're living in right now. And it's a mindset you have in an organization. If you're in an organization, if the way you work in January is the same the way you're working in December, then you have not done anything. There's got to be a mindset of continuous improvement. And we're not asking the experts to come and do it. We're asking people that in the work that you do, how can you do things better? How can you innovate? And it's a kind of mindset. And that one will transcend anything that you're faced with.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. And just in case there's anybody who has dropped a question, let me quickly see. Is there any question in the chat room? Maybe just one, and then we can call it a day with that one. But if there's no question in the chat room that anybody is asking from YouTube, from LinkedIn, and from Facebook, then I'll just quickly say again, thank you so much once again. I've enjoyed this conversation myself. I'll make sure to repost, reshare, get more people to watch. And the people who are watching, I'm sure that they've had a great time. It's been a great use of their time. And thanks to you, it's been a fulfilling birthday to me, because I keep looking forward to how to use that platform to reach out and to impact more people. And that's one of the reasons behind this, getting to talk to organizations, learners, trainers, and people who are interested in capacity building. Thanks for making this a fulfilling one. And I'm hoping that if we ever have to call on you again, you would oblige.
Yeah, it will always be a pleasure. And thanks,
Thank you
thanks so much
so
for giving me
much.
the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thank you very
Happy
much.
birthday
All
once
right.
again.
So thank you, sir. So behind the scene, I've had Mr. Adebayo helping me with the technicalities of this stream. Thank you, Mr. Adebayo. God bless you. Real good. And I've also had Mr. Sheyi help out with the graphics for this webcast. So just in case you're wondering who are these people, this is the Corporate Bridge, and I'm Fola Daniel Adelisi, also known as Fola Daniel Speaks, across all my social networks. And that's how I introduce myself, even on television, on radio, and whenever I'm out there. Please be sure to watch again, send to your friends, especially your HR department, send to your organization, send to your friends who are trainers. It's been a fantastic day. And today we've had a conversation about learning and development, whether they're supposed to be for impact or just KPI tools. I look forward to seeing you again next month when we come with another wonderful, experienced guest to have a riveting conversation. Bye-bye.